Hey everybody, just wanted to wish you a Happy New Year. We're here at JARS in North Carolina, just a little bit south of Waxhaw, and we're really enjoying our time here, getting some extra technical training. I've been doing a Cessna 206 transition course and maintenance. It's been going really, really well, and we thought it would be a really good idea just to look back a year ago, last January when Benjamin was born, and kind of share a testimony of how the Lord orchestrated events to protect us and protect him during that time, and just in a way to point to the goodness of God during that time.
We're Jenna and Tim Reed. We're missionaries in Brazil, and Christ Central is our sending church.
We were here at JARS really seeking God's face to figure out where we were supposed to go overseas. And it was actually during that time that Jenna got pregnant. And we were having a lot of conversations with missionaries in Brazil, learning about the need there. One of the things we ended up learning is that we actually needed to have a child in Brazil to be able to stay long term. And the Lord was already also confirming in our hearts that that was the direction he was taking us to go. So that's how we ended up moving overseas with Jenna being 6 months pregnant. Mm-hmm. But one of the challenges arriving in a new country as a foreigner obviously was not having a car and not having documentation to get a car.
We were just really praying that we could get the car before the birth. You could get Uber in the city that we lived in, but Ubers wouldn't go an hour away. And I had contacted some people that gave us like the number of a driver who could possibly take us there. But okay, we have a number of one driver. What if they're on vacation? What if they're out of the town? Because it was during the holidays.
Maybe a few weeks prior to that, we had a friend of ours, a really cool guy who helped us. He found this car for us, and I was able to go to the next city on Thanksgiving Day and go pick it up. It was definitely God providing for us that day, and it was maybe a little bit special to us because of the fact that it did take place on Thanksgiving. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. My due date was December 26th, and on December 27th, we found out we had COVID. I was shocked because I thought we wore N95 masks everywhere. We've been so careful. We got our vaccines, everything. How could we get COVID? And like the day after my due date. So I was really anxious about that. Mm-hmm. And then the OBGYN said, okay, I'm trying to figure out what to do because the maternity hospital I deliver at doesn't allow COVID patients in the hospital. So we might have to find another hospital for you to deliver in. Okay, this was my first baby. I'm in a foreign country. I can barely speak the language. This was the only hospital I've ever visited. I thought I'm gonna have my baby here.
Yeah, I guess it's never really, like, I don't remember questioning the rightness of God in allowing this to happen, but the love maybe at that time, it took a little bit more faith to figure out how is this God's most loving plan right now. Mm-hmm. Actually,
our doctor is a strong believer, and he kept saying, like, God will make a way, and he'll provide for you, and we're just gonna trust him in this. Mm-hmm. So a couple days after we were diagnosed with COVID, Dr. Lee said, okay, you need to come in, like, I need to check the baby. Mm-hmm. So we drove an hour and we had an appointment, and he listened to the heartbeat for what seemed like ages. And I remember before appointments, he would listen, oh, everything's good. He would always say, good, everything's great, everything's good. But this one, I felt like it was an eternity. He was just listening. I'm like, he's not saying anything. He's just listening. And then he said, it's okay. It's okay. I'm like, what does that mean? Okay. He said, it's a little bit different, but he's okay. I'm like, okay. So he's like, go home tonight, keep monitoring how much he's kicking, make sure you feel movement, and we'll see how he is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it was New Year's Eve. So, we watched fireworks at midnight and we went to sleep. But when I woke up on New Year's Day, like, I knew something was wrong. Mm-hmm. So I said, Tim, like, this isn't normal. Please call Dr. Louise. So Dr. Louise said, okay, we need to get an ultrasound immediately. So Tim called 3 or 4 different ultrasound
I think it was more than that.
technicians, and everyone was closed because it was New Year's Day. So Dr. Louise says, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. He called us back in like 10 minutes. There's an ultrasound technician waiting for you. Be there at 10, which was literally like 1 hour. So and it took us an hour to get there.
So we hopped in the car, and I think it was the heaviest rain that I have ever driven in my entire life. And we were just trying to book it to get to this ultrasound appointment, trying to find this ultrasound place. We don't know what it looks like, you know, typically things aren't very clearly labeled. And finally we find the place, and we go in. We find out that they had actually, it's one of the guys that teaches how to give ultrasounds.
So one of the best of the best.
One of the best of the best, and that they had been closed. They would have been closed that day. So they opened up to give an ultrasound for us on New Year's Day, which was absolutely a miracle. And he ends up doing the ultrasound, and then he comes back and he says, okay, I've talked with Dr. Louise. He's going to call you in a second, but Benjamin is coming today. He's like, it's an emergency. There's no more amniotic fluid. It's all gone. So I just remember going out to the waiting room, and just really at that moment we were a bit devastated.
I just kept thinking, what does that mean? What does that mean? You know, is my baby okay? And I remember going into the car thinking, if I have to have a C-section, I'm gonna die, or Benjamin's gonna die. I was really nervous about that. So I just remember texting everybody, texting my prayer team, texting my family, just please pray. I'm gonna have an emergency C-section. Please pray for, you know, the health of Benjamin and me, that everything goes well.
And yeah, the drive over there, I remember being just a really, it was really challenging. Just had to reassure her that the Lord was in control, reassure ourselves, really. One of those moments where you kind of have to preach to yourself.
So I think at the appointment, the day before, Dr. Louise said, I talked to everyone at the maternity hospital, and they're gonna let you deliver there. You're gonna have your own section of the hospital, and you can't leave your room. I did feel a little bit better once we got into the hospital. Actually, my doula I was planning to have a doula because it was a natural birth, and she met us there, and she was just still like, don't worry, like, he's gonna come today, you're gonna be able to meet him in an hour. And she wasn't a Christian, but she was like, oh, let's pray, and I have this Christian like playlist that we can play music. And it was interesting, just like, okay, at that moment, like, we were all thinking about God. Even if she wasn't a believer, we were all focused on, like, God is gonna make a way. And I saw it in every person there. The anesthesiologist, he was so kind and patient, and he explained everything. I was so nervous about getting the anesthesia, and he spoke a little bit of English, and he said, I'm going to do it slowly. He was so patient. And it was just amazing to see how God orchestrated every detail of Benjamin's birth. It was different than I had expected, but it was God's will. I remember the moment Dr. Louise pulled him out, and I could see Benjamin, and I could hear him cry, and just that relief.
It was like, relief.
He's okay, you know, there he is, he's okay, he's crying, and I'm okay too. So we're just so thankful to God, because we just saw God's hand through the entire thing. You know, in the midst of my fear, in the midst of my anxiety, like, God was in control. He is in control, and no matter what happened, he was with us in that moment, and I could see him everywhere.
One of the verses that's really stuck out to me, I forget exactly where it is. It's in Isaiah, but it's talking about the Lord's character as a shepherd, and how he gently leads those with young as the good shepherd. And that's something that I've seen.
And I've already been telling him, you are a miracle. You're a miracle baby. You know, like, you were perfectly healthy. You were a 10 out of 10 on the scale. When I had COVID and you had no amniotic fluid, we don't know for how long there was no fluid in there. But God has amazing plans for your life, because you're a miracle so that God can work in your life, and so that your life can be on display for his glory. And yeah, I'm already telling him that.